Hello everyone and good evening. As always, I'm Don Arleth and welcome to Flash News. We start off tonight with yet another grueling statistic. Over 17,000 new coronavirus cases in Poland were reported by the Ministry of Health. New restrictions will go into force on Saturday. At this point, it's up to the residents of Poland to follow the safety rules and to stop the spread of the coronavirus.
The limit of the medical services capacity is still being extended according to the Ministry of Health. When we have 19,400 people in hospitals, we have built a bed buffer for 29,400, so we have around 10,000 free beds for COVID patients. The first patients were already admitted to the first field hospital in Warsaw, built at the National Stadium. The second hospital in the capital city will be built at the Transport Aviation Base at Warsaw-Okęcie and not, as planned, in the Expo 21 hall. We will spend the money we have allocated for this purpose more effectively because the base is fully owned by the Polish army. From Monday on, children of classes from 1 to 3 elementary school, just like their older colleagues, switch to remote learning. Teachers can apply for a voucher of 500 zlotys for the purchase of IT equipment. It can also be a financial supplement of 500 zlotys if the teacher plans to buy equipment for the future. Doctors appeal to healers to donate plasma that can help patients overcome the virus. An example might be the hockey players of Tauron Podhale Nowy Targ who have COVID-19 behind them. 58 people died last day because of COVID-19. 387 people died because of the coexistence of other diseases. Nearly 11,000 patients have recovered.
The pandemic is difficult for everyone, and especially for the elderly, not only because they are most vulnerable to the virus and its deadly effects, but also because they are home in isolation. To help them maintain their mental health, support hotlines have been set up in many cities throughout the country.
The elderly are strongly affected by the effects of being locked in their homes. This fear of being infected with the coronavirus brings great anxiety and sadness to their lives because they are cut off from any social contact. They can apply for free psychological assistance, among others, to the Psychogeriatrics Center in Podlaskie. Support is provided over the phone. The psychologist writes a therapeutic plan, determines the intensity and length of the therapy. Seniors locked in their homes do not meet with family or friends. They often lack a normal conversation with another person. Yes, please, this is Kindness 60+. Seniors in Opole can call the Information and Education Center and talk about any subject. Here they will also receive current information about restrictions. Although they have their hours, they will call to make sure that nothing has changed. In this difficult time, it is worth remembering about the elderly, parents or grandparents, and take a moment to talk to them. It costs little and maybe it will work wonders.
What has been a neck-and-neck race for the presidency has still not been decided, even 3 days after the polls closed. While both candidates are still in the game, Joe Biden seems to have the advantage over Donald Trump. The whole world has been waiting in suspense for the results of a handful of key swing states. Perhaps we will know the results in the coming 24 to 48 hours.
Tens of millions of unsolicited ballots without any verification measures whatsoever.
Well, we're interrupting this because what the President of the United States is saying, in large part, is absolutely untrue.
This was when the TV station decided to stop broadcasting President Donald Trump's speech. For the time being, the result is determined in 44 out of 50 states. Trump won in 23 states, giving him 213 electoral votes. In 21 of them, and in the District of Columbia, Joe Biden won, which guarantees him 253 electoral votes.
The process is working. The count is being completed, and we'll know very soon. So thank you all for your patience, but we have to count the votes.
But in many places, emotion reached their peak. In some cases, the police must intervene. President Trump's supporters demonstrated under the slogan "Stop the Theft" against election rigging.
For the past 4 years, President Donald Trump has had our back. He has protected us, the forgotten men and women of America. And now he needs our help. And it is our turn to have his back.
Donald Trump is announcing a battle in the Supreme Court. This is similar to the situation 20 years ago. Back then, George Bush and Al Gore were competing for the office of U.S. president. Irregularities were also reported. The winner was announced after 35 days.
Governments face a dilemma. On the one hand, protecting the economy. On the other hand, protecting people and the healthcare system. The choices: further restrictions or a lockdown. The whole world is facing such a predicament. The number of people infected with the coronavirus is approaching 50 million, and there are still more records being broken around the world.
This is a sad picture of the sudden escalation of the pandemic. From a bird's eye view, it resembles a circulatory system. Thousands of Americans are waiting for hours to do a COVID-19 test. Almost 110,000 people were diagnosed with COVID-19 in the last 24 hours.
And we have more than 1,000 people dying every single day. So this is a very serious situation with COVID, and it looks like it's going to get worse.
Paris has tightened restrictions. Despite almost 60,000 infections a day, too many people have left their homes. Bars and restaurants will be open until 10 p.m. The second wave is not something abstract and is very violent. It is important that everyone follows the rules. This is the best way to help the doctors. In 4 Italian provinces, Lombardy, Piedmont, Aosta Valley and Calabria, a total lockdown has been introduced. You cannot leave the house without important reasons. In Belgium, at the request of hospitals, the army sends soldiers to take care of patients. The units are overloaded. We are extremely nervous. We may run out of places at the end of this or early next week. In the United Kingdom, the British people take to the streets unhappy with the lockdown. The police have already arrested over 100 people who are breaking the restrictions in their own way. The Prime Minister is trying to calm down the situation.
4 weeks is enough for these measures to make a real impact.
The country is to be closed until the 2nd of December.
Dozens of deaths and people missing are the consequences of Hurricane Eta, which passed over Central America. At least 50 people died in the northern part of Guatemala alone. The search for the missing, buried by mudslides, is still ongoing.
We have to reach the village of Cueja, which we have not been able to reach. The village suffered a landslide. We estimate that there are 25 houses, which is half of the village, buried, and we estimate that no less than 50 people are inside the houses. We cannot even establish how many there are. We will know in the next few hours. It's all flooded there. Here are my things. It's all here because we only got some of it out here, just some mattresses and clothes. Road infrastructure has been completely ruined, houses completely wiped out by mudslides and water. It is extremely difficult to reach the victims who may be buried underground. The worst situation is in the north and northeastern Guatemala. Floods and mudslides also affected many places in Honduras. Heavy rains there caused hazards for over 300,000 people. Almost 3,000 inhabitants were evacuated from the most dangerous areas. Storms also struck Costa Rica and Panama. In Salvador, on the other hand, an emergency alert was introduced. According to the authorities, nearly several dozen roads are impassable. The storm was classified as a Category 4 hurricane on the 5-stage Saffir-Simpson scale. It generated wind gusts which reached even up to 240 kilometers per hour.
I will not rest until the plague is over, says 81-year-old Maria Bogoyeva, a retired doctor from a hospital in Dubnica, Bulgaria. She does not care about her age or the difficulties she faces. Now she is back on the front lines of the fight against the pandemic.
Dr. Maria Bogoyeva does not want and cannot let doubts take over. She's the only virologist in the hospital in Dubnica, Bulgaria. So she has been working since the beginning of the pandemic, although she was actually retired. She was lying on the couch and she got the idea of working again back in March when the crisis was just beginning. Now she is not going to rest either because the situation is even more serious. The doctor emphasizes that mature age is no obstacle in performing her duties. It is enough to love your work. The second lockdown in England this year did not close the doors of the Gothic Cathedral in York. However, it is open not for the faithful but for contractors to renovate. Despite the pandemic, they continue their work. One of the largest Gothic temples in Northern Europe can hardly wait for the end of its renovation. It has already lasted 4 years and will not end soon. The contractors are carefully restoring every detail deteriorated by time. Time has certainly not been kind to vehicles that land in scrapyards. The Lithuanian authorities, however, noticed a light in the tunnel, and they offered their owners an interesting transaction. Everyone giving away an old car for scrap metal receives an annual ticket for public transport at a promotional price. There are also discounts for buying electric bikes or scooters. Until recently, these three former grain silos stood by the road near the town of Baraba in New South Wales and were an eyesore on the landscape. Now they not only decorate but also attract tourists. Thanks to a painter from Sydney, Fintan Maji painted an image of a man foraging for water on the huge silos. For some tourists, this handsome man looks like Prince Harry.
He looks like Prince Harry.
The author denies it. He explains that he is just an ordinary local redhead.
And finally, a miracle of technology. Brazilian pianist João Carlos Martins could feel it in his own fingers. The musician, after more than 2 decades, regained movement in his hands, and all thanks to bionic gloves, which will allow the pianist to return to the stage.
For the first time in 20 years, he's coming back to music. This is unbelievable. At the age of 80, I can play on my own again. It is a real miracle for me. João Carlos Martin is one of the most respected pianists ever. He has performed with leading orchestras in the United States and Europe. The piano has been the world to him since childhood, until he fell victim to a theft under tragic circumstances. An attacker hit him on the head with a metal pipe. The pianist lost power in his hands. He underwent 24 operations. The doctors didn't give a chance that he would ever come back to play his favorite instrument, so Martins became a conductor. And then his friend extended a helping hand. He created bionic neoprene gloves printed with a 3D printer. When I was first shown these gloves, I was joking that they were made for boxing and not for playing the piano. Special glove rods which lift Martin's fingers allow the pianist to play his favorite Bach sonatas again.
And with that feel-good story, we conclude our program here on Flash News. Karolina Pajączkowska will be back through the weekend. I will see you again next week. Until then, have a beautiful weekend. Good night.